You know, the world is full of strange stories. Some tales are so bizarre they feel like fiction, but honestly, this is one of those stories. It all begins at an airport in Luanda, Angola. The year was 2003. A massive airplane, a Boeing 727, sat on the tarmac. It had been there for over a year, just collecting dust under the hot African sun. The plane owed a lot of money in airport fees, over $4 million in fact. It was a forgotten giant, a relic of a past life. Then, on a warm evening in May, something impossible happened. The plane woke up, and then it vanished. The plane at the center of this mystery was a Boeing 727-223. Its tail number was N844AA. It once flew for American Airlines. It was a proud passenger jet carrying people across the United States for 25 years, but its glory days were over. In 2001, it was sold to a company called Aerospace Sales and Leasing. The plane was meant to be converted. It would become a flying fuel tanker. It was sent to Luanda to deliver diesel fuel to diamond mines in Angola. But the deal went bad. The plane was left behind. For 14 months, N844AA sat grounded. The Angolan sun was not kind to it. The paint faded. The interior was stripped out. All the passenger seats were removed. In their place, 10 large tanks were installed. They were designed to hold fuel. This made the plane a flying gas can. It was no longer a passenger plane, it was an industrial tool. But it was a broken one. It was parked in a long-term storage area of the airport. It became a familiar, if strange, sight, a symbol of a business deal gone wrong. The two men at the heart of the story were Ben Charles Padilla and John Michael Mutantu. Padilla was an American citizen. He was an aircraft mechanic, a flight engineer, and a private pilot. He was 50 years old. His family said he was in Angola working on the plane. He was hired by the plane's owner to get it ready to fly again. He was the expert on site. Mutantu was a mechanic from the Republic of the Congo. He was hired to help Padilla. Together they were supposed to make the old 727 airworthy. Padilla was a man with a complicated past. He had a pilot's license, but he was not certified to fly a Boeing 727. That type of plane requires a highly skilled three-person crew, a captain, a first officer, and a flight engineer. Padilla was only a flight engineer. Mutantu had no known flight experience at all. Friends and family described Padilla as a bit of a rogue, a man who loved adventure. But they never believed he was a criminal. He was just a man trying to do a job in a difficult place. No one knew what he was truly capable of. The evening of May 25, 2003, was like any other in Luanda. The day's heat was starting to fade. Airport workers were finishing their shifts. At around 5 p.m., just as dusk began to settle, Padilla and Mutantu were seen boarding the Boeing 727. This was not unusual. They had been working on the plane for weeks. An airport official saw them. He didn't think anything of it. He assumed they were doing more maintenance. No one suspected that this was the last time anyone would see them. What happened next was baffling. The plane began to move. It taxied in a clumsy, unprofessional way. It didn't follow the normal paths to the runway. It moved without lights. It moved without communicating with the control tower. This was a serious breach of airport rules. The controllers in the tower were confused. They watched the large, dark shape of the 727 lumber onto the active runway. They tried to raise the pilot on the radio. N844AA, identify yourself, they would have called. But there was only silence. The engines roared to life. It was a sound no one had heard from that plane in over a year. The 727, a notoriously loud aircraft, thundered down the runway. It was a powerful, violent takeoff. It used the entire length of the runway before lifting off. It climbed steeply into the sky. It turned southwest, heading out over the ocean. The plane's transponder, which sends a signal to radar, was turned off. The plane became a primary radar target only, a simple blip on a screen with no information about its identity, speed, or altitude. As the plane flew out over the water, it faded from the radar screens. It was swallowed by the darkness. It was gone. The entire event, from the moment it started moving to the moment it disappeared, lasted only a few minutes. In that short time, a 100-ton aircraft and 2 men had vanished from the face of the earth. There was no distress call. There was no communication. There was no wreckage. There was nothing. Just an empty spot on the tarmac where a plane used to be, and a mystery that would puzzle investigators for years to come. The disappearance of N844AA triggered a massive international search. The United States government was immediately alarmed. The theft happened less than 2 years after the September 11th attacks, and honestly, The idea of a large, unregistered and untraceable jet in unknown hands was terrifying. The FBI, the CIA, and the Department of Homeland Security all launched investigations. Was it stolen by terrorists? Was it going to be used as a weapon? Every intelligence agency was on high alert. They feared the worst. Satellites were tasked with searching for the missing plane, and spies on the ground across Africa were activated. They looked for any sign of a Boeing 727 that had been recently painted or hidden. They checked remote airstrips and isolated hangars. The search was vast. It covered the entire continent of Africa, and well, even beyond. U.S. diplomats put out alerts in many countries. They asked local authorities to report any sightings, but every lead went cold. The plane seemed to have dissolved into thin air. It was, quite simply, a phantom. Investigators looked closely at Ben Padilla. His sister, Benita Padilla Kirkland, told the press that her family feared he had crashed the plane. Or worse, that he was being held against his will. She believed he was hired to repossess the plane because of the financial dispute between its owner and the Angolans. But this theory had problems. Why fly off into the ocean? Why not fly to a friendly airport? The FBI investigated Padilla's life and finances. They found no links to terrorism. He was just a mechanic who found himself in a very strange situation. The plane's owner, Maury Joseph of Aerospace Sales and Leasing, also had his own theory. He believed Padilla had stolen the plane. Perhaps he crashed it in the ocean. Or maybe he landed it somewhere and was hiding. Joseph told reporters he felt Padilla had double-crossed him. But without the plane or Padilla, it was just speculation. No wreckage was ever found. Not a single piece of the plane. No oil slick on the water, no life raft, no signal from an emergency locator beacon. The Atlantic Ocean kept its secrets. The search turned up absolutely nothing. With no evidence, theories began to fill the vacuum. The mystery of N844AA became a legend among pilots and aviation enthusiasts. One of the most popular theories is that it was an insurance scam. The plane was worth about $1 million. Perhaps someone decided it was more valuable disappeared than sitting on the ground in Angola. The owner could collect the insurance money. In this scenario, Padilla and Mutantu would have landed the plane at a secret location, repainted it, and given it a new identity. It could then be sold on the black market. Another theory suggests a more sinister plot. The plane could have been stolen for criminal purposes. It was already converted into a fuel tanker, which would make it perfect for smuggling operations. It could be used to transport drugs from South America to Africa or Europe, or it could be used for illegal gun running. A large, untraceable cargo plane would be a priceless asset for any major criminal organization. In this version of events, Padilla and Mutantu were either willing participants or victims who were forced to fly the plane and then eliminated. The initial fear of terrorism has never completely gone away. Though no evidence linked Padilla or the plane to any terrorist group, the possibility remains. A large jet could be used in an attack, or it could be used to transport operatives or weapons. In the post-9/11 world, this was the nightmare scenario for intelligence agencies. They worried the plane was hidden away, waiting to be used. This theory explains the intense initial search. But as years passed with no attack and no sign of the plane, this theory has become less likely. Today, more than 2 decades later, the case of N844AA is as cold as the depths of the ocean where it may lie. It is officially unsolved. Ben Padilla and John Mutantu are still listed as missing persons. The plane is still on the list of stolen aircraft. The story remains a haunting tale of a ghost plane that took off one evening and never landed. Did it crash? Was it stolen for parts? Is it flying under a new name? We may never know. The sky is vast, and it holds its secrets well. The fate of the ghost plane